Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I step off the train and deliver an episode to you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good afternoon, listeners. It's a lovely, chilly day here in suburban Chicago, and I'm taking a walk home from the train, having had a fun day of teaching and administrative work at my college. Feels like it's been, well, it hasn't been that long actually. 2 episodes ago I did one, but it's time to do another episode of Board Game Espresso Triple Shot. That's the latte sound, of course. So today I'll be talking to you about 3 games I played recently for the first time and 1 game I dusted off, because that's how I roll in a Board Game Espresso Triple Shot. So the first game I want to talk about is called Project L. Project L was designed by Michael Mikas, Jan Sokal, and Adam Spanow. I apologize for bad pronunciation. Every one of those names had some various diacritical marks over the letters, but I don't know what those do to the pronunciation. So apologies to those designers. Project L was published by Boardcubator, and I think it first went out on Kickstarter, but I've seen it in stores now, so it's definitely around. It is an engine building, tile laying game, or tile recipe game that plays heavily on Tetris style pieces. They're not exactly Tetris pieces, but polyominoes anyway. And they're these cute little plastic polyominoes. And what you have are cards with different patterns on them. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to use the tiles that you have to fill in the patterns on the cards, and then acquire more cards and fill in the patterns on those cards, and so on. Each time you fill in the pattern on a card, it also gets you another tile, and you can turn actions to upgrade your tiles into better tiles by swapping them one for the next. The real trick of the game is that you can have multiple cards you're working on at once, and when you take the action that lets you put a tile on the card, there's a special action, they call it the master action or grand action or something, and you get to put 1 tile on each card you have. So if you're able to do that well, you can get to the point where you're completing 2 or 3 cards at the same time. Now the trick to the game that I didn't understand when we first started playing, I think the person who was explaining it didn't articulate this very loudly, or I missed it. That's either way. When you finish a card, I sort of assumed that the tiles you had used to fill in that card get distributed back into the bank. But in fact, it's the other way around. All the tiles you have stay in your control. So as you complete more cards, not only do you get bonus tiles from completing cards, but you now have a bigger and bigger pot of tiles available to you to fill in other cards. So it's an accelerating engine builder kind of on top of this recipe fulfillment pattern matching game. All in all, it's a nice little game. It takes like 15 minutes to play. It's very tight and clean. The graphic design is very minimalist with really nice and easy to understand iconography. It was a good time, and I'd happily play it again. I don't think I would buy it, just because games at this size and depth are not something I play a ton of, and I do own a bunch of games already that play at this size and depth. So the question is this a game I would want to replace other games of this size and depth in my collection? And the answer is no. Nonetheless, Project L is pretty good, and if you get a chance to try it, I would recommend. It also definitely would be a game I'd pick up at Goodwill if I found it there. So, or even maybe on sale for $5 or $10. I might get it. I don't think I'd pay full retail though. That's Project L. Next up is the game Freelancers. Now this game kind of came and went without much conversation, perhaps because it was designed by Donald Schultz rather than by Jerry Hawthorne, who seems to be Plaid. Oh, this game is from Plaid Hat Games. It was published in 2023. And it I think Jerry Hawthorne tends to get most of the spotlight for the Crossroads games coming out of Plaid Hat, but for my money, the best Crossroads game since Dead of Winter was Forgotten Waters. And Freelancers is essentially Forgotten Waters 2. In Forgotten Waters, you play a group of pirates sailing around an ocean having adventures. In Freelancers, you play basically a D&D campaign group with a wider variety of professions and goals, and you're doing a sort of land-based adventure party. As you play, you are encountering different enemies, you're coming into different villages, you're having different explorations, and just like in Forgotten Waters, there is a playbook with a variety of different action locations you can go to, and you play on them. If you've played Forgotten Waters, the game feels very, very similar. There are a couple differences, the big one being this game has a journey map that you use that is distinct from the playbook and separate from board. So you have a map you're drawing on, and as you're doing that, you actually interact with things as well. Like Forgotten Waters, Freelancers really excels from its incredible writing. In Forgotten Waters, there were lots of like hidden gems, beautiful moments of just hilarity and bizarreness. And Freelancers is the same way. I'm going to give one away here, but you could skip ahead 30 seconds or a minute if you want. When you enter the town, the narrator tells you about the town that you go in, and they say there's all sorts of strange bits of culture that you've never encountered before. They say like gnome yodeling, and you hear this like a little, and then competitive yogurting. It is so funny. We had to stop the thing because we were all laughing so hard. I didn't do it justice, I'm sure. So the voice narration is great. In fact, if you've played Forgotten Waters, you'll recognize the main narrator is the same narrator from Forgotten Waters. I haven't looked up the name of that narrator, but full credit where credit's due. This person is amazing. And then you engage in different activities at each stop, and your skill level in those activities in those different realms goes up, and you're earning little dots on your completion track that get you toward life goals, and you're developing the story for your character, and so on and so on. It works really well. If you like Forgotten Waters, it is as good or better as Forgotten Waters, and you should check it out. That's called Freelancers, a Crossroads game from Plaid Hat Games. Really good. Next up, I wanted to talk about a game I dusted off. As a reminder, the idea of a dusty game is that if I have a game that I haven't played for a year or more, it's sat on the shelf and gotten dusty, hence a dusty game. Now, this game was not incredibly dusty. It had been over a year, but not. I don't even think it had been 18 months. So, relatively light on the dust. Nonetheless, my son suggested he might like to play it when he and I had a little time, and so we busted out Kingdom Rush: Rift in Time. This is based on a computer game of the same name, Kingdom Rush. It's a tower defense game, and the board game is a tower defense game as well. The clever bit is that you have these trays with cards on them that show arrangements of enemies, and in order to stop them, you place these tiny tetromino pieces or polyomino pieces onto the trays based on the damage that's done by the buildings that you include. You also have a character who can intervene in various ways and add more polyomino pieces. You can also put your character on a group on one of the cards to stop it from moving, and you take damage, but you can do that. And just overall, the game really has a tight set of rules that feel really difficult, but doable. In fact, this last game we played, we won the scenario even though it felt incredibly difficult. So that was a nice success. The game was designed by Alara Cameron, Halana Hope, and Seng-Foon Lim, and published by Lucky Duck Games. The miniatures are really nice and the card trays are good and everything. The main thing for me is that the game does feel really hard. Like I said, we won, so it can't have been too hard, especially because it had been a while since we played. So it's not like Ghost Stories or something where you need to have a really deep and thorough knowledge of the game and do really well in order to win. Kingdom Rush is more deterministic. The only thing not deterministic are what order the cards are going to come out. But everything else, you can see what's coming and you control how the different pieces move around. So it's a collaborative puzzle to solve. And from that regard, it's really fun. It is not my favorite. Given my druthers, I'd rather play a lot of other games, but it's a good time. I enjoy playing it with my son. It's cool art and a thoughtful puzzle. Definitely worth checking out if you get a chance. Kingdom Rush, Rift in Time. I haven't played the other Kingdom Rush. They did an expansion to it that is, I think, more characters and more enemies and blah, blah, blah. So we dusted that off and had a good time doing so. All right, the final game that I'm going to talk about in my board game espresso is a game that Rob, my design partner and co-leader of Toggle Gaming and friend, found at Goodwill. This is a game called Patchwork. Now, all of you are like, Brendan, how have you never talked about Patchwork on your podcast before? And I say, haha, fooled you. This is not Uwe Rosenberg's tile laying game Patchwork. This is a game from 2009 called Patchwork that was republished as FlipOut. So if you were going to go looking for it today, you should look for FlipOut. It's one word, FLIPOUT. It was published by Gamewright and designed by Daniel Weaver. Now the premise of this game is pretty simple. You get a hand of cards, 6 cards, as I recall, and on those cards are one of 8 patterns, 6 patterns, something like that. There's a bunch of patterns. And you take those cards and you put them in a card holder in front of you. And the gimmick is, on the other side of the cards is another pattern, and you don't know what patterns are on those cards. And it's totally random. So you might have one card that's got the sort of yellow wavy lines, and on the back it's purple grid, and another card is purple grid on the side you have and purple grid on the other side. And another card is blue squares with red diamonds on the back. And another card might have, so, it's a variety. What you do in the game is on your turn, you can trade a pair of cards from your card holder to theirs, and you keep the side facing you, and the side facing the person whose card tray you're putting it on, facing them. The second thing you can do is switch the place of 2 cards in any card holder, either yours or one of your opponents. The third thing you can do is score a set of 4 or more cards. And a set of 4 or more cards have to all have the same pattern and be adjacent to each other. So there's this whole thing where you're like moving cards that you can see onto other people's trays and then scoring the cards off their trays that they didn't even know were part of a pattern. Or vice versa, people don't know you've got a pattern going, and then you score the cards from on your own tray. It's a really clever, simple game, very easy to play, pretty easy to teach. Not a whole lot of depth to it. It's very luck driven, so this is not a tournament style game. I think you can be better at it or not, depending how good you are at spotting patterns, but that's not a huge part of it. Is just which cards you have in your hand and whether or not you can make them be into a pattern before someone else scores the pattern on your hand. Because one of the things that happens a lot is you have a pattern on the backs of your cards that you don't know is there, and you're getting all ready to do something, and then someone scores half your hand and you have to draw new cards. So that part's a little frustrating. But overall, part of what it tells you is don't try to score stuff in your hand. Try to score stuff in other people's hands because you can see it. But yeah, overall, it's a really good, very simple, very light, not going to be a barn burner, not going to be anyone's favorite game, but fun, a good time, well worth taking a look at if you get a chance. Like I said, it was called Patchwork. It's a deck of cards and 4 card holders, so it's nothing, actually 6 card holders maybe. Nothing to write home about, but really entertaining and a fun game to have played. I've actually played it twice, enjoyed it both times. What games have you played lately? Head over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and share your new plays there. Let me know if you've played any of the games that I played or what other new games you've been trying. Any of those things, I would love to hear from you. You can send me a geek mail message. Wombat929 is my username there. You could also email me, brendan@rattleboxgames.com, if you wanted to send me an email.
Future Brendan here. As I was recording this, I didn't realize it was going to be the last episode of Season 6. But here we are. This is episode 600, so it's the last episode of Season 6, and that brings me to the end of my season. Only 3 months late. Next week is spring break at my school, so this seems like a good time to take a week break. And then starting in April, I'll be back with the top of the stack April 1st. And the first thing out of the gate we're going to do is my new top 50. Because the last time I did one was at the end of 2022, or at the end of 2021. And so now it's time to do a new top 50. So looking forward to going over that with you in the first few episodes of the next season. I'll see you on April 1st.
Well, that's just about it for my Board Game Espresso episode for today. Thanks for joining me on my walk. I hope your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.
Hello. Testing. Okay.